Ellie Goulding has had an interesting career spanning over 10 years. I've been a personal fan of hers since the Lights era, but recently I've had my own concerns. It's been roughly 5 years since Delirium dropped, and the journey to Brightest Blue, her fourth record, hasn't been the smoothest journey. Brightest Blue has had 7 different singles, including the scrap single 16. None of them made the top 10 in her home country of Great Britain. Only one of them scraped by the top 40 in the United States, and that would be Close to Me featuring Sway Lee and Diplo. It's gotten to the point where nearly all of these tracks are being relegated to the side B half of Brightest Blue. Ellie even said in her own interview that these tracks are basically an alternate ego that she would dub EG.0.
And the second half is kind of like, the best way to describe it is like an alter ego where I'm putting the songs on it that I've released, basically, all the songs that have ended up on the radio and the songs that I've written with other people.
Her last big hit in the UK was a Christmas time cover of the timeless song River by Joni Mitchell. Yeah, I'll be honest and say that charts have never been too important for Ellie Goulding as an artist, but they are important to Polydor Records, her record label. I chalk up the long wait for this album, which probably would have dropped sometime last year, to Polydor waiting for a hit that just never came. Don't get me wrong, I actually don't dislike her new stuff, but compared to her earlier catalog, it is definitely lackluster. I'm gonna do a brief run through Ellie Goulding, her career, and how we went from this to this. I think other than the title track Lights, most Americans are not familiar with the kind of music Ellie Goulding has made beyond electronic features and songs from the Halcyon era. Her first record, released in 2010, Lights, is a charming and quaint folk pop record with lots of synths. It sounds honestly fresh even today. The album has electronic elements, but it's really grounded by Ellie's use of acoustic elements. It was received relatively well upon release, but people did say that Ellie did not maximize her voice or her ability to really mesh with instrumentals on the record. Ironically enough, the track that would be her claim to fame, Lights, wasn't even included on the first pressing of the album. It was included on a re-release, and it took 33 weeks for the song to reach the summit of 2 on the Billboard Hot 100 charts in America. Honestly, I do think a couple of tracks are overlooked on here. Starry Eyed is one of my favorite tracks that she's ever recorded to date. So is Guns and Horses. I do think that these tracks definitely sound a little dated because they do sound like coffee shop record tracks, but they're fun to listen to. An Unexpected Romance with Skrillex, and some time in the studio later, Ellie came back with Halcyon, my personal favorite record of hers. Halcyon is an album that really made her a worldwide sensation. Anything Could Happen charted internationally and high in her own home country. It received high marks, with reviewers calling it a marked improvement on both production and vocals. I think the biggest development here was how successful she was at using the electronic sound to redefine herself. It would also mark the beginning of her days collaborating with producers like Calvin Harris and later down the line, Greg Kurstin, Major Lazer, Diplo, and Kygo. Halcyon is a really dark and beautiful record themed after the ocean and the water. She'd later call the album very self-indulgent, all her, all the lyrics on the album, but quite frankly, I think that's just her complimenting herself because this record is brilliant. I mean, the comparison of her on her first album cover and what she looked like during the Halcyon era, it's just a complete transformation. I don't normally subscribe to dark equals mature, but in this case, it definitely looks that way. The in-between period between Halcyon and Delirium pretty much cemented her shift towards EDM bangers and bops. She would re-release Halcyon with Halcyon Days, which definitely sounded way more conventional than the actual record itself. It included the single Burn, which sneaked its way to the top 20 in the United States charts. I always thought that Burn was a good mix between her traditional sound and a pop sound. But her true peak as a commercial pop artist came in the form of Love Me Like You Do from the 50 Shades of Grey original soundtrack. This track was loaded with a team of top-notch writers: Max Martin, Savan Koteka, Tovlo, Ilya, Ali Payami. These guys are the best you can get in terms of writing pop in the mid-2010s. Like, honestly, they have credits with everybody big. Ironically enough, Ellie Goulding has absolutely nothing to do with the writing or the production process. She was merely a vocal vessel for this track. The track would go on to hit number 1 just about everywhere in Europe and number 3 here in the States. I think this was the moment that Polydor and a lot of the people in the world realized that Ellie Goulding was a superstar in her own right. I have listened to this track nearly 500 times. It was my most played song in 2015 behind Taylor Swift's Style. Like, this song was everywhere too. Like, I would hear it in gas stations, at weddings, just everywhere. But I personally do think that this song blowing up is why Polydor was so annoying about Ellie Goulding with her 4th album. Delirium, the album that came after Love Me Like You Do, definitely sounded like it was trying to jump on that record's success. The entire album is constructed by Greg Kurstin and Max Martin. The biggest single other than Love Me Like You Do off that record was On My Mind, which was a Max Martin classic with lots of just fun sampling, Ellie using her voice in a way that was pretty different, and it was a diss track directed at Ed Sheeran. Apparently those two dated and had a misunderstanding along the way, though honestly the details are pretty sparse. After Delirium, Ellie would go into a quiet holding period for a few years, only releasing a few collaborations here and there. Ellie Goulding would come back to the scene with Close to Me, a track featuring Sway Lee and Diplo. It was pretty trendy, it's a really catchy track and I do like it, but it did leave her fans from the Halcyon days, no pun intended, a little bit underwhelmed. Also underwhelmed was Polydor, expecting it to be a bigger smash. She released a follow-up called Flux, which definitely sounds more in line with her older stuff and probably the vision of Brightest Blue itself, but it didn't make any noise. I felt like it was more of a reassurance to her gold diggers, yes, that's her fans' fan-base name, that her album would sound more in line with her older stuff. She released 16, but that came and went, even though it was really sweet of a song. Then her next major single, Hate Me, featuring Juice WRLD, had moderate success, even becoming a meme on TikTok for edgy teens to duet to. I still can't believe Juice WRLD is gone. Rest in peace. I mean, he wasn't really my favorite singer, but I did respect his hits and his place in the industry. His contribution on the song is actually one of my favorite parts of this collaboration. It was around the time that Hate Me came out that I found it funny that they tried to make Ellie Goulding sound like Halsey. A lot of the tracks that she released around this time period sound like they'd be Halsey features. I mean, come on guys, she's married and chill and she's made for a different genre than Halsey. Worry About Me with Black Bear was when I started to really get concerned. It bombed, and so did Power, which I actually did like a little bit. At the time of recording, the last track that we have received from Ellie Goulding for Brightest Blue is Slow Grenade featuring Lauv. I think this track is actually really good. It's a fun exploration of a different sound without being too obnoxious about it, and Lauv actually does a pretty good job here. Brightest Blue will be presented in 2 different halves. It's pretty clear that Polydor has waved their white flag and is letting Goulding release the record that she wanted to release in the first place, which honestly is pretty cool of them. I do think that compared to maybe a record label like, I don't know, Atlantic Records, that it's actually pretty neat of them to listen to their artists and to give up on the whole commercialization thing. I'm not implying that Ellie Goulding is past her prime. I do believe that she is capable of delivering another smash hit, but at this current streaming climate, she definitely isn't a mainstream, mainline artist that all the kiddies are gonna go cling to. Not to sound like a complete asshole, but honestly, I think a lot of Ellie Goulding's successes were built off being able to capitalize off trends and being able to be at the right moment, at the right place, at the right time with the right song. At the moment, there doesn't seem to be a right moment, so it is wise to just drop this album and to really just hope for the best. I myself have actually ordered a signed vinyl blindly, so I do actually really do stan her, and I do plan to do a sort of review when this album drops. I do think there are a lot of factors, but how a record label treats you and how they roll out your album actually really determines a lot of the success that you have as an artist. A lot of our faves from the 2010s era of pop are not doing as well as we think they should be doing, and that could be in part to the fact that the times have changed, that the audience is completely different, and that the whole game has completely changed with streaming. People don't have to listen to the same type of music anymore. To make something in the pop genre that really sticks means you either have the star power to really just force it to number 1, or a fan base loyal enough to carry you at least for a few weeks. So what really did happen to Ellie Goulding? A lot of things, but I think she's happy with the record that she's going to deliver soon, and EG.0 isn't a bad experiment whatsoever. At the end of the day, it was all an experiment. Once again, thank you so much for watching my video. If you made it to the end, don't forget to like, subscribe, comment what your favorite Ellie Goulding song was, how excited you are for the upcoming album, and whether or not you're going to listen to it. I also have channel memberships. The people who have signed up, thank you so much, guys. I have you guys pictured right here, and I will continue to show you guys off to the world at the end of every video. Definitely look at those perks and considering signing up. If you've been following me for some time, I'll be continuing live streaming. Follow me on my socials. Thanks again so much, guys.